Hey guys, welcome. For today's class, we're going to get into the hips a little bit more. So, our hips are such large, dense muscles that we have, and their job really is to stabilize. And I feel like sometimes they just do their job really well. Like things tend to hang on, get really strong, and a little bit grippy. So, in the first part of the class, we'll work to create a little more fluid range of motion, lubricate through the hip joint, get some movement going through the tissue, and then we'll settle into some longer held hip opening postures for the yin portion at the end of class. So it'll be nice if you have a little bit of support, especially for that yin stuff. A couple pillows, even our blankets work really well. If you have blocks, just grab them so you have a little array of stuff nearby to start with. And then we're going to start seated. I'm up on a blanket for a little bit of height, a throw pillow, something like that. Cushion works really well too. And then just take whatever cross-legged seat feels good. We'll switch at some point, so whichever leg's in front. Bring your hands down to your thighs. And just for a moment, close your eyes or let your gaze get soft. Root back through your sitting bones. Just feel that firm connection. And then from there, lengthen up through the top of your head. Sit tall. Open up through your chest by gently drawing your shoulder blades back. And then into that space, just let yourself start to take some fuller breaths. And don't force it, don't push it. As we start to open up the body, you'll open up a little bit more room for breath as well. Really just use that as a tool to shift from whatever else you've been doing before this into your time on your mat so you can really stay connected to your body, to your breath. And just take a few more like that. A little slower, a little fuller. And just start with some big circles of the hips. You can keep eyes closed. You can just take a peek here. You're going to bring your torso forward and then just take big circles around to the side, to the back, and over to the other side. Go slowly, move with your breath. You might even feel here, you can really start to feel the pelvis rock back and forth, side to side. You might find it feels good to take one full length of breath all the way around, or half with your inhale, half with your exhale. Doesn't really matter, just starting to coordinate the two. You can think of your pelvis here like a bowl, and it goes forward and back. It can tilt side to side. Can actually, the two halves of the pelvis can move independently of one another. Now, there's a fair amount of range of motion that we don't always take advantage of all of that. About like a use it or lose it, right? Then those ranges of motions can get a little sticky. All right, come on back to center, reach both arms up, and then exhale, fold forward. It's early in practice. It might be early in your day. So find whatever the right amount of forward fold is for you. That might be fairly high up today. That might be hands a little bit further forward with a little bit more bend at your waistline. Wherever you are, see if you can stay anchored back through your seat. Sometimes it really helps to press your hands down and forward. Stay long out through your spine. And let your fold come there with the length and the hinge at your hips. And just take a couple full breaths. And walk your hands back. Switch the leg that's in front. It's probably the one you don't usually sit with. So it might take a little wiggling around to find a place where again it feels like the hips are even-ish level. And with your hands to your thighs, sit tall. And then take those circles in the opposite direction. So come forward, over to the other side, whichever one you didn't do. Good. Roll back. So you get that rounding through your back and then off to the side. All right. Big movements. Let the shoulders get in. You can just start to notice here, and we'll do this throughout practice. Where is the range of motion really fluid and smooth? Where does it feel not so much like that? Just a little sticky or a little more sensation. And again, just match the movement with your breath. right? Whatever that rhythm is. So there's a connection between the two. And come on back to center, sit tall, reach your arms up, and then exhale, fold forward. Again, maybe just a little, maybe a little bit further. Press your hands down and forward, anchor your hips back. Stay long through your spine, and let that hinge come at your hips more so than just folding forward at your waistline. That's sometimes when we get a little bit more rounding and less length in the spine. And then just take a few full breaths. Walk your hands back up. Now we're going to come forward to tabletop, so you can set your pillows, blankets, whatever you've got off to the side. And let's take a moment to set up a good solid foundation here so that your hands are right under your shoulders, hips over your knees. Spread out wide through your fingers like a fan, and then press your fingertips down into your mat. And then start to move into some cat-cow from here. So inhale, arch your back, look forward, and then exhale, round, draw your chin to your chest. And see if you can lead here. Just move with your breath. Inhale, come forward, more from the bowl of your pelvis than necessarily from the hips, or really that arch and curve and round of your back. So as you come forward, it feels like that whole bowl of your pelvis tilts forward and your tailbone tilts up. And then as you exhale, the bowl of your pelvis tilts back and you lengthen your tailbone down. Good. Just a few more like that. Go nice and slow again. You can feel that range of motion along the way. Right, there's usually a lot going on here. There's shoulder action, there's stuff through our spine. So we're just choosing where the attention goes to bring a little more awareness there. Yes, and then come back to center and stay strong through your hands and bring your right leg out behind you. And turn your outer right hip down so your pelvis is level and stay lifted through your belly. And then bend your knees and start to make a couple big slow circles with your knee and your hip. I find the slower we move, just the more aware we become of what's happening all through the hip joint. And take the other direction. And movements like this are also really good for bringing about the fluid in the hip joint, synovial fluid. It's like the WD-40 for our joints, especially sometimes early in the morning. It can get a little bit creaky. Okay, stretch your right leg out behind you again. Take a breath in. And then with your exhale, swing your right leg all the way over to the right side of your mat so that your knee and your foot in general are in line, and working towards the whole sole of your foot down to the ground with your toes pointing forward. You can have it a little bit further back if that range of motion isn't quite there, no worries. Right, and we're going to come into child's pose from here. And if this feels like doesn't work in my body, just come to regular child's pose. Right, just a little different variation for the hips. Walk your hands back, stretch your arms forward again. So you walk your hips back and then stretch your arms forward. And you might feel like, I know in my body, the outer edge of my foot wants to lift. Press the pinky edge of your foot down towards your mat. You might just get a little bit more stretch through the outer line of your leg. If it feels a little different, that's okay, right? Different ranges of motion are good for using the ones that we don't always use, as long as there's no pain, no pinching, that kind of sensation. And then walk yourself all the way forward again. Swing your right leg back to that three-legged tabletop. And then turn the outer hip down. Get really strong through your hands. Tuck your left toes under if they're not already. Take a full breath in. With your exhale, press all the way up and back, three-legged downward facing dog. Good. Inhale here, anchor to your hands. Exhale, bend your knee, open your hip, stack your right hip on top of your left. I'm going to say lift it through your left shoulder, rooted back through your left heel, And press the sole of your right foot back. And come back to center. Inhale. Step all the way through. Exhale, low lunge. Inhale, step your left foot up to meet your right. And then take your feet out a little bit wider. Settle your knees down, Malasana squat. Great variation here is right, bent knees, hands to thighs a little higher. This always doesn't work for everybody's knees. Right, so find the one that works best for you. Hug your inner legs in. Lift your heart up to your hands. And then just move a little side to side. So shift your weight to your right foot and then to your left. All right, thinking about that goal in the hips just to find a little more fluidity than that always strong stability that they have. One's not better than the other. I think it's just important that we have both. And come back to center, hands down, lift your hips, and walk your feet either back together or hip width apart. Lift halfway, inhale, strong through your legs, and then exhale, fold. Root down into your feet, inhale, come all the way up. Exhale, hands together at your heart, take a breath. Reach up, inhale, fold forward, exhale. Lift halfway, inhale, and then feet a little bit wider. Settle your hips down, Malasana squat, exhale. Hands to heart, lift your heart to your hands and hug your inner legs to center. Take a breath in. Breath out, release your hands, lift your hips. This time step your right foot all the way back. Plant your hands, step your left foot back to meet it, high plank. Take a breath in, and then just lower your knees down to your mat. So you're back in tabletop. You may even need to walk your hands back just a little bit so they're right under your shoulders again. Good. Press through your fingertips, lift up through your belly, and stretch your left leg back behind you. And then just level out through your pelvis here. Roll your inner left thigh up and stay lifted, especially through the left side of your belly. And we'll do those same circles. Bend your knee, and then just a couple of big, slow circles. Go whichever direction first. We'll do both, so it doesn't matter which way you start. You might find, like I am, that this range of motion in the hip is way less fluid on this side than it is on the other. Good. Go the opposite way. It's not uncommon in our bodies, but especially in our hips and shoulders, that they're not necessarily in balance side to side, but you'll find some big differences. Come back, stretch your left leg out behind you. Take a breath in, and then exhale, step your left foot over to your left. Right, so hip and foot or knee and foot might be in line. You might have the foot a little bit further back. And then come back, child's pose with your left leg stretched out. And again, right, a little different variation. So no pain, no pressure. If that's feeling like that sensation's kind of popping up here, then just come to regular child's pose, which in and of itself is a great hip and low back opener. And press down through the outer edge, pinky edge of your left foot. And just take another full round of breath. And inhale, slide forward again. Stretch your left leg out behind you. Level off through your hips. Tuck your right toes under if they're not. Take a breath in. And then anchor through your hands. Stretch up and back, three-legged downward facing dog. And then bend your knee, open your hip, stack your left hip on top of your right. And the right shoulder here tends to want to drop down with the twist. So if you lift up through the underside of the right shoulder and press your left foot back, you might get a little more stretch to the front of the hip instead of the rotation through the upper back. And inhale, come back, three-legged dog. Exhale, step all the way through. Inhale, step your right foot up to meet your left. Exhale, squat. All right, so again, either here, forearms to thighs. Sometimes a blanket or a pillow under your heels. Right? For many of us, heels are lifted here. That's fine. I have a little more range of motion in the ankles here than most, so my squat's kind of low. Right, so just work with wherever your body's at today. Feet a little wider is often going to give you more space too, so that's something to play with. Let them come as wide as it works for you. And then lift your heart to your hands. Settle your hips down towards the ground. And release your hands. Inhale, lift your hips. And then walk your feet back in towards center, touching or hip width apart. Lift forward halfway, inhale. Fold, exhale. Bring your hands to your hips. Press down from your hips to your feet, strong legs. Inhale, come all the way up. Exhale, bring your hands together at your heart. Great, you guys. And then start here with feet together. Find a focus point for your eyes, something to help with balance. And then shift your weight off onto your left foot. Bring your right knee up. And so just working towards this 90-degree angle at hip and knee and ankle with your foot flexed. Anchor down from your left hip to your left foot and stand tall. Okay, with your inhale, squeeze your outer knee towards your outer hip. Bring your knee out to the side. And exhale, close it back together. And just move slowly, feel the range of motion. Inhale, open up. Exhale, close back together. Good, just a couple times, slow and steady with your breath. Inhale, open, squeeze outer knee to outer hip. Close back together, exhale. Nice, one more, inhale, open. Exhale, close, and then bend your standing knee. Cross ankle to knee, figure four, sit back. Bring the weight back into your left heel. And stay lifted through your upper body, even as you settle your hips low. And then just be mindful of where your pelvis is here. Sometimes the right side wants to drop down. Lift a little bit from underside of right knee and right hip. You can even take hands to hips and feel where they are in space. Take another full round of breath. And then inhale, stand all the way up. Exhale, both feet down to your mat. Take a breath in between. And I'm just going to turn this way so you guys can still see the leg. Stand into your right foot. Bring your left knee up. All right, flex your foot. And just work towards a 90-degree angle. It might be a little bit lower, but just find a place where the leg feels strong. And then stay on tall. Stay open through your upper body. Inhale, open to the side. Squeeze knee towards outer hip. And exhale, close, come back together. Inhale, open, again, side to side. It might feel a little different. And a couple more, your breath, your rhythm. We're getting that fluid range of motion and some strengthening on that outer line of the leg. Back to center, inhale, bend your front knee or your standing leg, they're both in front, and then settle down, standing figure four. And stabilize through your standing foot. And then feel where the hips are here. If it feels like the left hip's kind of lilting off to the side, let's lift a little from underside of hip and knee. As you settle back into your hips, lift your heart up towards your hands. Take another full round of breath. And inhale, stand all the way up. Exhale, bring your hands together at your heart. Take a breath. And you're going to take a big step wide with your right foot. So come to face towards the long end of your mat. And then turn your toes out, heels in. Bend your knees down, goddess squat. And then just line up so that your knees are over your ankles and that your knees track down the center of your feet. So that might mean how much you turn your feet in or out. Start with your hands to your heart. Squeeze your heels in towards center and lift your heart to your hands. With your next inhale, press into your heels, straighten your legs, reach your arms all the way up. Exhale, bend your knees, hands to heart. And just finding that fluidity through the joints. Inhale, sweep up. Exhale, bend your knees, hands to heart. Good. Couple more. Slow and steady with your breath. Reach up. Bend your knees, hands to heart. Exhale. Take one more. Sweep up. And bend knees, hands to heart. Great. This time as you inhale, come all the way up. Turn your toes forward. Exhale, fold forward, wide-legged forward fold. And you can just make sure that toes are pointing straight forward to begin. Strengthen through your legs as you press down into your feet. And then let your upper body fold. Let's take a breath or two here. And a little release through legs. Next, inhale, lengthen forward, lift halfway. Walk your hands forward under your shoulders. And then exhale, bend into your right knee. So a couple options here. You can come side lunge, right? Just like this with both toes pointing or both feet pointing straight forward. If you have a little bit more range of motion through the hips, bend your right knee a little bit more and lift your left toes up towards the ceiling. And keep your hands down for support or hands to heart. And really press your right foot and your left heel into the ground. And lift your heart up towards your hands or just keep your upper body lifted here. Next, inhale, come through center. Exhale to your left. So again, side lunge here, and it might be different side to side, or come down. Right, press into your left foot, right heel, hands to heart or hands down. And just move a little bit with breath here. Come through center, inhale to your right, and through center to your left. Now let's take one more each side, through center, back through middle, follow your breath, and then to the left. Good. Come through center, inhale, fold forward, exhale. Inhale, lift forward halfway. Exhale, walk your hands to the front of your mat. Step back, downward facing dog. Okay, stay strong through your hands. Inhale, right leg up and back. Exhale, bend your knee, open your hip. And then same idea, stay lifted through your left shoulder. This time take a couple big circles with your knee and your hip. And reverse directions. And then inhale, send your legs straight back. Exhale, bring your right knee behind your right wrist, pigeon pose. You can always see this figure 4 on your back too. Sometimes pigeon for some of us just isn't awesome for knees or ankles. And so some options for support here, you could side a block or a blanket or a pillow underneath your right hip if it feels like it's just kind of hanging out there in space. Okay, and then start to walk your upper body forward. You can rest on forearms, on a block, or make a pillow with your hands. And we'll stay for a little bit of time as we just move into a few longer holds. We'll see if you can start to slow your breath down here. You might even just take it a little longer. If you notice where the count of your breath is, right, like you're inhaling to 4 or 5, exhaling 4 or 5, then just add on a count. And start to slow down. And then just check in with sensation in your hip. And to remember, Indian, that we really want to find where that edge is, come to that edge of sensation, but not pushing past it. It feels like that place where something, enough is happening, but you're not tensing up against the pose, against that sensation. See if you can let the weight of your body just to settle down a little bit more. Sometimes it takes a few moments of that transition when we move from places that are a little bit more active and into these more passive holds of yin. And give yourself just a few more breaths here. And then just move slowly in the transitions. When we've been there a little bit of time, nice to give your body those moments to adjust. You can walk your hands back, tuck your left toes, and then stretch all the way back, three-legged downward facing dog again. You can do that same thing where we started. Bend your knee, open your hip, and then just super slow, like half time. And take a couple big circles. The movement can be nice in between as long as we're not just shocking the body from those longer holds into dynamic movement again. Okay, second side, left leg up. Bend your left knee, open your hip. Lift the underside of your right shoulder. Anchor back through your right heel, and then a couple big circles. Knee and hip on this side. And reverse direction. And come back, three-legged dog. Take a breath in. And then exhale, left knee behind left wrist, pigeon pose. Same thing if you want some support under your left hip here, that might feel nice. Especially once we start to really relax into the pose, that little bit of extra support can feel good. And then just make sure your right leg is straight behind you. And when you're ready, fold forward to forearms, forehead to a block. Or make a pillow with your hands, you can rest there. And notice sensation on this side. The where, the what might feel different. And just make sure it's a place that feels sustainable, or you can stay here for a little bit of time. And also that feels like you can really soften around that sensation. And bring your attention to your breath. And see if with each exhale breath, you can let things just get a little bit heavier. It feels like you're just letting the weight of your body settle down to the ground. And that fluid movement that we did to help get some lubrication going in the hip joint. Just find a little bit of fluidity through the way that the hip joint moves and those muscles around it. As we settle into here, into these longer holds, and hopefully starts to create a little bit more space to encourage those really strong, stabilizing muscles of the hips. to let go just a little. Like with anything, it's such a balance between the two. We need the strength and the stability for activity and movement. And if it's too much there, we tend to feel rigid and locked up. Right? Too fluid, and we don't feel like we have the support. So just exploring both ends of those ranges of motion and support within our body. Take a few more breaths on this side. And then walk your hands back. Tuck your right toes under if they're not. And again, press back, three-legged downward facing dog, left leg high. Bend your knee and a couple really slow circles with your knee with your hip. And then come back, downward facing dog. Take a breath in. And as you exhale, bring your knees down to your mat. Sit back to your heels. We're going to take a couple seated poses. So I like to sit back up on the blanket like we were when we started. And you can have your variety of support, pillows, blocks, whatever you've got nearby. Okay, start with your legs out straight in front. And just sitting up right on the edge of that pillow or blanket to help keep some space in your low back and a little lift through your pelvis. So it feels like more like that bowl of your pelvis is in neutral instead of tilted all the way back. Okay, and then cross your left knee on top of your right. And this is a great stage one. Sometimes this is our stopping point in the hips. This is plenty of sensation. If that's you, stay here. For some of us, tuck your right foot back. Sometimes we try that and you're like, maybe not, maybe leg extended. Okay, and then you can move your heels in a little closer towards your hips, or you can bring your shins a little more parallel. Those also might change kind of where and what you feel in your hips. Okay, and then you're gonna want some support to forward fold, maybe. You might say, I'm gonna say right here, this is my edge of sensation, and there's a lot going on. Great. It feels like you have a little bit more room. Right? You can walk your hands forward. I'm building up a couple blocks. You could do a couple blocks with a pillow or two or a blanket on top. And if you had one block, you can do block to your knee, forehead to your knee, something like that. We'll be here for a few minutes, so set up what works best for you. Where that you, when you come to that edge, it feels like you can then let go into the support. If it works, it's really nice for your head to rest on something. If not, you might even just let your chin soften down towards your chest. Just exploring the places where it feels like there's not a lot of effort. And trying to let the stronger muscle tissue let go. So we can get in here a little bit more to the less flexible connective tissue, the fascia, and the tendons. Not necessarily always just to stretch. We don't have to think about stretching out the tendons. But the force, the resistance that we create within the shape of the pose actually helps them to strengthen and become more resilient. And we get to those tissues a little bit more as we relax the muscle tissues, right? The places that help us to engage, to stabilize. And so like we did in pigeon pose and swan pose, we call it in yin. Let's bring your attention back to your breath. And then with each exhale breath, let things soften and settle just a little bit more. And sometimes it's really helpful to imagine, to visualize That you're moving your breath into where the sensation is. And this is definitely more of a visualization. And as we do that, as we bring attention to those areas, we can increase the blood flow, increase oxygenation then to that area, which just helps benefit the health of the tissue. And just give yourself a few more breaths on this side. And when you're ready, walk yourself all the way back up. You can set props off to the side for just a moment, and then gently unwind your legs. Take your feet out a little bit wider. Take your hands behind you, and then just let your knees windshield wiper a little bit side to side. And back to that slow but fluid range of motion. All right, second side, stretch your legs out, and then we'll start with right knee on top. And then just check in here. Is that enough? Is that edge of sensation today? If yes, stay. You have a little bit more room to go. Tuck your left foot back. Heels closer in, shins more parallel. Just play and adjust. This side might feel different from the first. And so adjust to what you need, more support, more props. And then you can either stay upright, so same thing, or fold forward. You might even need more or less height in the support for your forward fold here. And as you get settled in, situated there, anchor back through your seat. And then just bring attention back to your breath. Sometimes we lose that in the transition. And just feel where your breath is moving to. If you're folded forward, you might even feel that little bit of resistance of your belly on your thighs as you breathe. It can be really nice feedback for where your breath is at. And just notice sensation. We notice where the edge is, where the amount of sensation is. You can also start to tune into really where it's coming from, like where in your hip or your leg or your knee. And that way we also just start to fine tune what we think of as our hips. You can use this as a pretty broad term. And there's a lot of different moving parts within that area of our pelvis and our hips. And with each breath, just invite in a little more softness, a little more ease. and a little less effort. And if the sensation's a little stronger here, be mindful that sometimes even as you relax through that area where you feel it, we can hold on in other places, like the shoulders might be holding on, or eyes feel a little bit clenched. And so just be mindful that you can soften everywhere. And then just take a few more breaths on this side. And when you're ready, walk yourself back up, unwind your legs, and then you can do that same. Take your feet out a little bit wider, take your hands behind you, and then just let your knees sway side to side. Or if there's other little movements that would be good, right, feel free to do that. Again, just be mindful that you're not moving too quickly, too dynamically after those longer holds. It can be a little bit of a shock for the body. Okay, one more. Soles of your feet together, knees out wide in butterfly. So one thing that can be great here is support under your knees. I've got blocks, but if you've got throw pillows, you can fold them in half or just snuggle them underneath your thighs. So this is really nice, especially if when you're sitting here, it feels like your knees are up pretty high. That can put some compression on the front of the hips. If you're here and that feels like it's fine, I'm going to stay there, that's great. And then you can stay upright or bring your forehead to something taller like a bolster. You can also take more of a forward fold like we just had in that shoelace pose. If you have a couple blocks and a pillow, this one's nice, or you can stack like we just did for that other forward fold. Just take a moment, set up the right place for you. And just come back to that same pattern as you anchor back through your seat. Settle into the awareness of your breath. And just notice sensation here. Move away from any pain. And with each breath, just let yourself soften a touch more. And so I think about that process as breath by breath, just little by little, to create the space. And see if here again you can really tune into where the sensation's coming from. Almost like you're just trying to pinpoint it. Maybe more one side or the other. Might be in a really specific place within that area of pelvis and hips. And just notice. And meet that with breath. And just take a few more breaths here. Slowly help yourself back up. And set your props off to the side. Use your hands to help your knees back together. We're going to come all the way down onto our backs and move into Shavasana in just a moment. So if you want some extra support, pillows, stuff like that for Shavasana, just have that nearby where you can reach it. As you come all the way down, bring your knees into your chest. Take your hands to your kneecaps, and you're just going to make some knee circles one more time. So not in the same direction, but take out wide and then away from you, back together and up the center. And so like you're drawing circles with your knees, but in opposite directions. Maybe a little bit more like a figure eight or infinity symbol. And then move the other way. So reverse your circles. And then bring your knees back to center. Hug your knees into your chest. Curl your forehead up to your knees. Take one more big inhale in. And then exhale, reverse or release. Let's stretch your legs out. Shavasana. And here's a great place for support if you want something under your knees. That can be nice for the low back. A blanket over your belly sometimes is nice for a little extra grounding or support there. Hands by your sides or hands to your belly. And just close your eyes. Let your body settle back into stillness. And release any effort again here. So let the weight of your back body settle down to your mat, to the ground. And allow your front body to remain open enough. And there's still room for breath. And then rest there. If you have a little bit more time to stay and rest, please do. And if you're ready to come out, take some fuller breaths. And with your next inhale, take a full stretch. Reach your arms up overhead, lengthen out through your legs. Draw your knees towards your chest. and roll to your side. From there, press yourself all the way back up to sitting. When you get there, bring your hands together at your heart. And anchor your seat. Sit tall. Lift your heart to your hands. Bow your head to your heart. Thank you so much for being here and sharing practice today. Namaste.